What did you observe and perceive in the business world that you really wanted to create a change?
So what I experienced myself when I was building my last company, its purpose was to make money. It didn't come from my heart. I had associated freedom with money and had built that system for exactly that.
Like the very nature of the work is just the high stress that a lot of founders will experience.
I got to realize that founders that suffer, they are not regulated, they are not following what's really true for them, they are disconnected from themselves. And with that, there are, let's say, unhealthy environments that are created.
Especially in bigger companies, with on all these different dynamics, because of the fast-paced movement, there isn't always the capacity to really process a lot of those emotions moment to moment.
Let's say someone who is like themselves not regulated, not following their calling, not in touch with their emotions, is unable to create an environment in which like humans can really thrive.
What I'm observing is that people don't necessarily feel safe any longer to actually share what's true, to share what's real.
I really wanted to change that. We want to create a place where people use the tools, modalities that are around for hundreds, sometimes even thousands of years to actually access what's really true for them, to really check in with themselves. So am I acting in line with, let's say, my being while I create business?
It's a very inspiring spiritual process to really stay committed to this idea. I'm going to stay in contact with you, regardless of how difficult it is, with as well the added notion that I'm going to take ownership of my experience. I'm not going to project and blame onto you.
What that leads to is...
Welcome to the Heart of Man podcast, a podcast for any man seeking to live in alignment with his deepest core and lead a life of profound meaning and connection. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and I'm here to empower you through transformative conversations, eye-opening insights, and practical wisdom. Join me now as we venture into the heart of man. Let's dive in. Many founders carry pressure, heaviness, and expectations that few people ever see. And even with everything they've built, many still feel disconnected from themselves, unsure how to lead in a way that feels honest, aligned, and true. Welcome back to the Heart of Man. Today, I'm here to introduce a project I'm deeply excited to share with you. This is the first episode of a 6-part podcast series that I've created with my close friend Bjoern Keune. This series speaks directly to the challenges founders, business professionals, and high-performing men face today. It is designed to support them in evolving from high-functioning stress into embodied and integrated leadership, where you can remain clear and calm under pressure by aligning who you are with how you lead. The inspiration began in August, when Bjoern and I led a workshop for a group of founders in Berlin. While my background includes embodied coaching, somatic work, and group facilitation, Bjoern brings more than 15 years of entrepreneurial experience, along with his work as a mentor, advisor, and investor to many founders, supported by years of Zen meditation. It became clear how naturally our approaches complemented each other. In my coaching practice, I've come to intimately understand the inner challenges high-performing men face today, and Bjoern understands them from the inside out, having lived through many of the same pressures. Together, that combination gives us a clear and embodied perspective on what founders actually need. What became undeniable is how many founders are still operating in the dark. They carry the intensity of leadership without knowing how to work with it or ask for support. They struggle to remain true to themselves when things get difficult. Many find it hard to maintain relationships in business or at home. And many feel caught in patterns that disconnect from their worth, well-being, and deeper sense of purpose. This founder series was created to offer a new path forward. We wanted to pour our lived experience, our clarity, and our care into these conversations, and choose to share this entire project for free so more people can access it. Our first conversation explores how to lead in ways that don't create more pressure or disconnection, but instead bring us closer to ourselves and to each other. We look at how founders can build companies from their core, in connection to their inner genius, and in service to others, while ensuring that business growth stays aligned with their own personal growth. We explore these principles through the lens of Bjoern's new company, Acta, his attempt to prove that companies can be built from truth, presence, and genuine service to humanity. We speak about what becomes possible when founders reconnect with their innate core. We then look at the pressures many founders carry, the emotional toll of leading alone, and why emotional leadership and nervous system awareness become essential if we want to stay grounded under pressure. We speak about cultivating relationships rooted in truth, connection, and genuine care, because when our closest relationships fracture, it affects how we lead everything else. And finally, we explore what it means to create from devotion, following our inner excitement and honesty, rather than being led by stress or external pressure, and how to build an ongoing relationship with the question of our deeper nature, releasing any roles and masks that no longer serve us, so we can live and lead closer to our core. For the past 2 months, this has been the project that Bjoern and I have been building, and I'm genuinely excited to share it with you. For any founder, high performer, or man who succeeded outwardly, it feels the quiet desire to go deeper. This Founder Series is with full conviction where I would direct you to. Let us begin.
Bjoern, without further ado, it's such a pleasure to have you here back on the Heart of Man for a second round. How are you doing today?
Very well. Thank you, Alex.
First of all, it's been around, I'm going to say 20 weeks since we published the first conversation we had. And the truth of the matter is that we had it 16 months ago, and we had first met each other 18 months ago.
True.
And I guess what the listeners really don't know is how much of a friendship and bond and brotherhood as well we have formed throughout that time. Just something that I'm just so immensely grateful for. And I couldn't imagine myself wanting to be in a different place right now, other than in this studio right now, having this conversation, and as well contributing in some way through our understandings and our perspectives towards other people. So there's so much more I could say to our friendship and as well what it means to me. But, just want to really say thank you for coming along. And I think last thing I'll say as well to that is what makes it so special for me is that, we've both been kind of in resonance with the understanding, like if we would have met 7 years ago or 8 years ago, we probably wouldn't have been friends.
Yep.
And you've been more vocal about it than I have, but I think for me it would have been as well just as clear. But it's just been so wonderful to see our, let's just say, opposing journeys and how they're coming together in this really beautiful way. And it's been super touching for me to see where you initially came from and the journey that you've been on. And the thing that I really see is how much you care about humanity and how much you really want to help. And anyone that might know you just a little bit is you don't need to work anymore for the rest of your life if you choose not to.
Yeah.
And simultaneously, you're willing to choose to suffer and sacrifice a lot of your freedom for something that's meaningful to you. And for that, I just want people to know more about you. And I just want you to know that, I'm going to keep bringing you on this show because I couldn't imagine something more meaningful in my eyes.
Thanks, man. Yeah, and let me just reflect back that, like, I really do feel the same. Like, being here right now in that moment with you is like super special and really just a reflection of, like, the friendship and depth that we have developed over the past 16 months, which actually feels like ages. I honestly feel like I knew you for like, fucking 30 years or so.
Yeah.
I think that's just a reflection of the depth and the vulnerability and also the experiences we had together. So yeah, feels really wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Last thing I'll say as well to that, and will probably as well be one of the aspects that we're going to touch on, but it was from our first conversation at the Cafe Rise, where we had just addressed some of our experiences. I could just see that, oh, this guy went through some stuff and he went through some suffering. And there's a gentleness that and a softness that I perceived in you, not because you don't have an erect spine, not because you're not strong and bold and courageous yourself, but there was a way that I perceived, at least, that life has shaped and formed you that had led to a cracking of any armor and led to a certain softness and gentleness that I would argue, a lot of individuals simply don't have. And that's no slight on them. It just, I think it requires a lot of suffering, a lot of pain in order to really step into that. But I think it was really one of the biggest pieces that really had allowed us to build the connection that we had formed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
And I like I perceived something maybe the same or very similar in you. Like I still remember like when I came to Bali last year, I just told you like first of all, like I came to like do that retreat with you, but then and I didn't find like words for it, but I simply knew I want to work with you
Yeah.
because you could meet a part in me that many other people weren't able to meet. And it felt like that part still feels very safe with you, and that comes from a depth of your being. And I think that is what allows also for our connection to be so open. And I mean, I share pretty much everything with you that happens in my life,
I'm the same, man. And I always say, man, I mean, I put up this whole 2-month like elite men's group program and it never ended up working out. But what I got out of it was a best friend, and I couldn't ask for anything better. So yeah, I mean, without further ado, I guess I want to just bring our listeners a little bit
Yeah.
into the conversation that I would love to touch into, which is a few months ago, you initiated and started a company called Akta, where essentially you bring founders and entrepreneurs together to support them to unlock their highest potential so they can really bring useful ideas into life. That's how it's referenced on your website. And from all that I know about you, you've had almost 2 decades worth of business experience, business knowledge, experiences that you had witnessed in the business world, particularly in the startup culture in Berlin, that I have a sense really formed a lot of the understandings that you're putting into Okta. So, two-part question for you. Perhaps you can share with our listeners what is Okta? And what did you observe and perceive in the business world that you really wanted to create a change with that initiative?
Let me start with the second question first. So what I experienced myself when I was building my last company that then got successfully exited, I built that or its purpose was to make money. It didn't come from, let's say, the depth of my being. It didn't come from my heart. Like I had that goal in mind. I had associated freedom with money and had built that system for exactly that. And in that process, as you know, I had completely lost myself. I was disconnected from myself, disconnected from my emotions, and needed all sorts of very unhealthy outlets for that, and really demonstrated also, let's say, harmful behavior to the world. And at some point, after I made my way through all the different, things I had to work through emotionally and spiritually and stuff, I got to realize that there are actually many companies that are not being built by someone who is like following their deepest calling, but just being built for, making some money fast, or like following some whatever projections, or following them expectations that people feel in terms of, maybe their parents or society or whatsoever, right?
Seeing a gap in the market.
Totally. And what that leads to is, let's say, first of all, founders that suffer. They are not regulated. They are not following what's really true for them. They are disconnected from themselves, as I was. And with that, there are, let's say, unhealthy environments that are created. Let's say, someone who is like themselves not regulated, not following their calling, not in touch with their emotions, is unable to create an environment in which like humans can really thrive, right? And I really wanted to change that by creating a company that is truly different. And while I say that, there are also companies that are different. There are these founders that tapped into something, and where their business is the truest expression of themselves. So that exists. I would argue it is the minority, but it does exist, right? So I'm not the only one that goes for that. However, in order to create a world in which businesses are more than just machines to print money, and in which, let's say, spending time at my workplace becomes more than just, say, a means to an end to pay my rent at the end of the month, there needs to be a different approach towards building business, and there need to be a different type of founders. And that led to the idea of creating Acta, where we said, like with my co-founder Luis, we want to create a place where people use the tools and modalities that are around for hundreds, sometimes even thousands of years, to actually access their true inner genius, to access what's really true for them, and then embark on an entrepreneurial journey. But while they do that, use modalities to regulate, to come back to themselves regularly, to really check in with themselves. Okay, am I acting in line with, let's say, my being, so to say, while I create business? Because in the end, especially for founders, but even for everyone that just, let's say, has a regular job, there's nothing else where we spend so much time on.
Yeah.
Let's say an average 8 to 12 hours. If you're a founder, maybe even 14 to 16 hours a day. And if that place becomes something where we get to experience more of life, where we get to, let's say, deepen our human experience, where we get to experience deep connections with others, right? Where we get to experience maybe compassion and even love at some point. That makes investing that time and energy so much more worthwhile.
I love what you had just said, particularly those last few sentences, because they put so much to point why I wanted to speak to you about these very subject matters in our podcast today. Because I fully am aware of the fact that this is not a business podcast and it's not so much the focus of where I'm going. However, it is a lot around self-leadership. It is a lot around relational leadership. And there is also this recognition around many individuals want to lead themselves better in their professional lives. And to your point, this is also where we dedicate most of our time. So how can we do it in the most conscious, connected, authentic, present, truthful way? And I think there is a lot of value, first of all, that you've already alluded to in some of the principles and some of the philosophies that I've already been picking up on. And my intention is simply just to flesh these out for this conversation, and as well, hopefully have our listeners receive a lot of value from that. So I guess the first place where I would really like to begin here is by addressing this idea of relationships. And commonly in this podcast, we speak about romantic relationship challenges. But if we want to just expand this definition, this idea of relationships, it goes so much further. And a lot of the relationship struggles as well that we experience are in our work dynamics, right? And commonly there is going to be an association towards authority. There's going to be power dynamics that can sometimes as well commonly show up. And so the question is, how do we handle those really well? So perhaps you can also start off by illuminating to us in the first paradigm, quote unquote, in your first 2 decades of business, how would you say you would operate relationally in the work environment? And what changes are you now attempting to create in terms of how you relate to your colleagues and as well co-founders?
As Bjoern and I recorded this founder series, one thing became clear. Founders and high-performing men are hungry for a place where they can speak honestly, develop emotional leadership, and be supported by people who understand the pressures they live with. With that in mind, we're opening a small and intimate cohort beginning February 2026 for founders, business professionals, and leaders who want to apply the principles we explore in the series to their lives so they can lead with clarity, emotional steadiness, and integrity, even in high-pressure situations. Now, this is not a large program. It is a focused space where members receive personal mentorship from both of us. Bjoern brings more than 15 years of entrepreneurial experience, investing and advising founders, grounded in years of Zen meditation. My background in embodied coaching, somatic work, and teaching over the past decade helps men reconnect to themselves, regulate under pressure, and lead from a grounded and aligned place. When we tested this approach with a group of founders in Berlin, the response was clear. Men felt supported not just in their business challenges, but in their relationships, emotional life, and inner world. Each month, we will meet for a 3-hour session combining coaching, mentorship, and guided embodiment work. The aim is simple: to help you stay grounded, connected, and clear in the areas that matter most. This cohort is designed for founders and leaders who want to move beyond high-functioning stress, lead their business, relationships, and live in an embodied and integrated way, build a life that feels aligned rather than reactive. You'll be supported by people who understand what you carry and who can help you lead from your core instead of from pressure. If this is the kind of guidance and structure you desire, you'll find a link to join in the show notes.
Let's say in the past, and now I'm using, let's say, a bit of an extreme example, but it was pretty much like either you're with me or you're against me, right? So you can be my friend or my enemy. And as long as you're with me, then we will have a connection and a relationship. The moment that changes, because there might be disagreement on the content, I basically step out of that relationship. It also had to do with, let's say, me seeing relationships as quite transactional. So as long as you're useful to me, I will keep a relationship with you. The moment you're not useful to me anymore, I'll step out. And also, let's say one last aspect is like I would take a lot of things quite personal, in terms of you maybe having a different opinion makes you a bad person from my point of view. So this was kind of like, I mean, not always, but many times this was, let's say, my way of like dealing with relationships. At some point I got, and that was about 4 years ago, I got deeply inspired by an author who's called Stephen Levine. He's written a couple of books, but like the one that where I picked up the idea around, let's say, remaining in contact and remaining in relationship, no matter what the content is, was one was like Who Dies, and the other one is called Embracing the Beloved. And this idea somehow touched me quite deeply. The idea of saying, I recognize you in our relationship, and that creates a space in which content can happen. And we might agree or disagree on certain pieces of content whatsoever, but the relationship comes first. And it even goes a little further. There's a deep desire in me to, for myself, but then also for others, make the experience of I can be in relationship, I can be in contact while being fully expressed my authentic self. And not having to make this choice around being fully myself and remaining in connection. Because that's what I have kind of like learned is if I'm fully myself, if I show up with all my parts, I will lose connection.
Yeah.
And that's a part of me that wants to create the opposite experience. Something that I also really practice in my romantic relationship. And it's something that we are bringing into ACTA, to really value the relationships above everything. There's an important notion to it. Being my authentic self doesn't mean that I can now insult you and you have to stay in relationship with me, right? It's about owning and speaking my truth in terms of what is happening inside of me without the projection on you or the other person. That's an important distinction here, because like this is not the this is not like, okay, we stay in connection, you can do whatever the fuck you want and insult or hit me or whatever, right? That's not so but that's optional. Many times it's like misunderstood, but it's around owning and speaking my truth that I feel inside of me, inside of my body, without the projection on the other person. And that's kind of like I feel like that's a gift, and a workplace can even become a gift where we gift that to each other. That would be kind of like my dream, and we really committed to that practice in ACTA, to put the relationship first and then see how we can arrange the content. Instead of, let's say, being reactive to content that is being shared and discussed, and really by that, because that's an important part of the process of getting very close to myself and accessing my, let's say, true inner genius, is to be able to express in a safe environment, in a safe relationship that is always available, and not of like, if, for example, we had people that worked with us who a couple of weeks into a project said like, actually, 6 weeks ago, it felt like this is what I really want to do and want to bring in the world. And I get to realize it is not. And we had invested into them. We said, hey, if that is your truth, let's work through that and see how, what it is today and what has led to that, let's say, very, very fast change. But we remained in connection. We are starting to look for solutions to that, rather than saying, you said you are in for that, now you are not anymore, fuck off. Right? And that makes a big difference.
I love what you said, and I think in many ways it as well mitigates a lot of the politics as well that get created, especially in bigger companies, with on all these different dynamics where what I'm observing is that people don't necessarily feel safe any longer to actually share what's true, to share what's real. And, especially within one-to-one relating, this is where I'm going to be saying that I'm more trained in. I observe we create stories. We create stories about who people are. We create judgments, and it's just a very unconscious protective mechanism of the mind to keep us safe. And we create adversarial relationships. We make them enemies, right? And then all of a sudden we're victims to these incredibly terrible human beings, right? And I think there is something. First of all, it's a very inspiring spiritual process to really stay committed to this idea. I'm going to stay in contact with you regardless of how difficult it is, with as well the added notion that I'm going to take ownership of my experience and I'm not going to project and blame onto you. And I hope you don't mind me sharing this, but we had dinner last night and we had kind of addressed the fact that you have been in this really wonderful connective relationship over the last 7 months, from my understanding. And what you had shared with me is that you never had very heated conflict or fights where I guess a lot of the things happen that in natural relationships just do, like the shaming, the blaming, the blowing up, the disconnection, and then the rupture, and then the coming together again. And these are all, I guess, common things that individuals address as relationship dynamics that show up for them. And what I heard you communicate to me was that the biggest thing that's really supported you on that journey is to have that principle that is guiding both of you to remain in contact within the relationship.
Yeah. We both like really committed to that, to speak to what is true and what we experience and what we feel, but to do it from a connected place. And come together and like this is what's moving inside of me. That's what I feel, and then looking at it together and like working through that. But coming together in a regulated place. Yeah, totally.
And what I'm also observing is it just requires a lot of emotional maturity to do so. Because even though these are work environments, we still have to consider that we're dealing with attachment wounds, perhaps. And there is going to be this natural inclination, association towards who did I need to be in order to belong, to be accepted, to be loved, to feel safe. And all of us have particular types of strategies, right, in order to maintain connection. And I guess what you're as well ushering individuals into with that principle is to be courageous enough to be in contact with the very thing that is here for you, and have that willingness to address it, and to also have the willingness to be with the consequences of that, which is, it's a high ask, but I would also say this is really what's required in order to have fruitful, sustainable, and mature relationships.
Yeah, totally. And just to quickly bring it back into the business context for a second, um, I think there is a real tangible impact from like building a business around this type of relationships. So just assume someone has been assigned to a project, and they have a lot of fear around that, of like fear of failure, don't know what to do, whatever, right? So now there are two options. If there are these type of relationships in this environment for it, they could speak to the fear. If, and that is, let's say, the case in, let's say, the more average kind of culture, if they can't speak to that fear because that makes them seen as a weak person, or then they might not get promoted, whatever, they will try to execute that project based on fear. The outcome and result is no chance that it's going to be as good as someone who is like acting fully empowered and has the courage to maybe confront the fears and work through them, right? But if they have to keep them for themselves, the output won't be as good as someone who can speak to that. And that's the environment that we need, where people can own that. And then we can help them to work through that, or maybe see, okay, maybe the project wasn't right for you, whatever. But our ambition is that ACTA will become a place where people can, first of all, access and then own and speak the truth that is happening inside of them with regard to what they are bringing into the world at any moment.
This is beautiful, and I definitely want to bookmark as well this notion of execution, because I think as well you have some very powerful principles around that. I guess just one last subject that I just want to address around the fact of relationships. When we were having lunch just now, I had addressed the fact with you that I had overheard that there was a time in your life where you had essentially became aware of the fact that you've built a lot of these transactional relationships that were, essentially formed to look at where might I require or where might I benefit from this person in the future. And from what I understood, there was a moment in your life where you have decided to really be clear with individuals, where you recognize there is no future with them anymore. And my curiosity within your own personal life, what is it that you began to value that was in conflict with that old value, let's just say?
Mainly projections. So let's say I have, or yeah, let's say the connections I kind of like gave up where I received lots of judgment. And that comes back to what I said earlier. Like I'm this whole idea around staying in contact works if I'm speaking about my own experience and what maybe someone does something, what I feel inside of me. But the moment I start projecting, like, you are wrong, you did that, blah, 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 it is nothing that I value. And if someone doesn't have the capacity to, let's say, be speaking to their own experience, then I'm not willing to give that a lot of like energy, basically. And I'm always available for a connection if the judgment stops. But I'm not here to, let's say, receive judgment continuously and then defend myself and explain and whatever. So yeah, this was the main reason. Like, really, like, when there was lots of judgment, I basically stepped out of the connections. Yeah.
Something that I've been recently as well observing in my own life, and this is, it seems like a season that I'm going through, but it seems like there is a fleshing out of some relationships in my life that I'm starting to observe were never aligned in the first place. And what I've observed is there was certain ruptures that have occurred in the relationship. And it seems like there was no ability to actually create repair. And I noticed how that feels incredibly heartbreaking actually for me, because I aspire to live under this notion that we're all human, right? I'm going to fuck up. You're going to fuck up. Things are going to rub us the wrong way, and I think that's just the essence of it. It doesn't condone the fact that we should all attempt our best to be responsible, mature human beings. But nonetheless, things are going to rub us the wrong way, and we're just going to mess up at times.
Yeah, agree.
And I actually would love to create a permission field where that is allowed, where that is acceptable. and actually where we can create an environment where if these ruptures occur, we have an agreement field that we'll come together in conversation about it. We'll sit in circle and we'll talk about it, and we'll share, we'll own, hey, this is my stuff. This is what showed up for me. Right? We'll take responsibility for the fact where we've blamed or shamed the other person. We'll own to our mistakes. We'll apologize, right? And we'll own the fact that, hey, like, I really care about this connection. I love you as a person, and I want to remain in contact with you. And I think that is a way that I really want to relate. But I've observed as well is that certain individuals simply don't seem to have the capacity to do so. And I also want to say it's okay. But it's heartbreaking for me to recognize relationships have to naturally end. Because one of the participants is simply not available for that experience of connection. And last thing I'll say as well to that is, one therapist that I spoke to on this podcast, Dewey Freeman, he speaks about this idea that trust is built through having experiences of rupture where things were not okay and come out okay on the other side. That's actually where attachment is built over time. Trust is built over time. We have experiences of big challenge and we come out okay on the other side of them.
And I love what you said, like repair is such an important thing. And there's so useful processes around how we can do repair if both are committed to actually repairing something. I think it's, I love that you mentioned that. I think it's an important add-on to what I said before, because as you said, like, people are going to fuck up and then there needs to be repair. But if two people or a group of people, doesn't matter, are truly committed to a relationship, then repair can happen.
Beautiful. And I also just want to name, I think there's a number of podcasts as well where this idea of creating a structure for repair has been touched and alluded to, and I'll as well add them in the show notes. But, for the sake as well, for the many different conversations that I really want to highlight, I would love for us to move on. And I think something as well that I found and observed to be very distinct in your company that you really want to provide to founders and entrepreneurs is early access to self-awareness practices and as well growth practices. And I would love for you to share a little bit about that and what your philosophy around that is. Why is that important? Because what I observe is so many founders and entrepreneurs that come to me, they come to me at later stages of their lives. When they've had the exit, when they've made the money, when the relationship falls apart, when their life falls apart, and now it's like they have to do it. I want to hear from you why early access and why do you believe it's important to do it from the beginning?
I mean, first of all, if I would have had access to these tools earlier in my career, I would have chosen different path. I know that I would have followed my let's say the callings that were more true for me. I would have probably created or have shown less harmful behavior, and I would have probably had way more joy in life, actually. So I simply believe it's useful to have very early access. The second is life as a founder is stressful. There are tons of demands, just tons of demands. And it's kind of an illusion to believe that, creating a company and then also achieving the success that one aims for is going to be an easy ride. So especially with that segment of people, there is really a need of a need for regulation, a need for coming back to self, also a need for understanding behaviors, understanding what's driving them. Because let's say there's kind of like an unhealthy pattern that drives a certain behavior. So let's say in an average job, that might still be okay, and in a certain way, like it creates stress, but maybe it's a level of stress that the system can still kind of handle, and it's okay. Now, if you work like, say, 16, 20 hours, whatever the number is, it's that unhealthy pattern is fueled with a lot of energy. Right? Because entrepreneurs are very expressive and go out and create and build. So that unhealthy thing is even multiplied by all the energy that goes into it, right? So it's even more important to have these tools and practices and modalities. And what they are is basically it's coaching, it's breathwork, conscious connected breathing, it's meditation. Whereas meditation has also a different role, but it can be used as a self-awareness tool. It's also some embodiment work that we do as a team to access like certain energy and like get in the right kind of like mindset to move forward. And it's also lots of, let's say, coming together as human beings and connecting through meditation, through deep sharings and reflections, and also like, showing up openly and expressed and vulnerable. So this kind of like the set of tools that we use. And I think it does two things. One is it's helps the people that work with us to, let's say, better understand what it is that they truly care for, what is really close to their heart that I want to like bring into the world. What do they really care for? It equips them with the right set of tools to like move through that entrepreneurial journey in a more regulated, better way. But it also enables them to become step by step the more, let's say, expressed, whole, complete human being. Without saying there's ever an end to their journey, it simply opens them to more of what we call the life experience, right? And that's really like my ambition, that we can't guarantee financial or business success. No one can. Like, we're all in that journey. We have no fucking idea. Like, we have the best ideas of that world and we have strong execution. In the end, we don't know if it's going to work out or not, right? But I want everyone that worked for us, with us, no matter if that's a month or a year or whatever, to, if they leave our company, to be a further developed, more expressed, more joyful human being.
Yeah.
And
I've as well had the great fortune as well to be in Berlin and as well witness you and the company together, and as well bring along some breathwork circles. And it's been special as well to witness you introducing these modalities such as Zen meditation and breathwork, embodiment practices, to a lot of young entrepreneurs who are in their 20s, who've never had access to any of this, and who are, let's just say, very new to all of this. And I just see it as incredibly inspiring to see how these young individuals are able to receive access to these very things that, essentially I stumbled on because of suffering, because of pain. And there's almost this curiosity of what that might provide them and support them with in the future. And that's just really exciting. And one of the things I guess want to just do here right now is just extrapolate some of the different modalities and as well their functions. You had communicated the fact that meditation has a very distinct function, and I see that as well. And from my understanding as well, it's the core discipline. It's the core discipline that you bring through in your work. What is it about it that's so important?
So there we have to look at two different aspects of meditation, right? So one is, if I meditate daily, I will find more peace, more calmness. I'll be able to build a relationship to the content of my mind. So my thoughts, I will be able to build a relationship to my emotions rather than relating from them. I will be able to relate to them. I probably take the better decisions and just also be more regulated, right? So there are a couple of direct benefits from meditating daily. And meditation is a doorway to deepening the understanding of what we call life or existence. It's I know we can also use psychedelics and stuff to like get these type of insights, but meditation is the most from and that's just me saying it, right? And that probably shamans that have a different view on it because they have a special connection to ayahuasca or whatever, right? It's just my experience with meditation. It is the most real experience I can make of, let's say, let's call it nature of existence, that my system can remember. And that is, first of all, to me personally, it's the experience where I get to experience the highest level of freedom, love, and joy. And in very challenging, difficult situations where there's lots of pain or like strong emotions moving, it helps me to not take things too seriously. And now it's important for me to say, I'm not claiming that I'm constantly resting in being and everything is just passing through. But it does help to know that this life experience is totally real and it's not completely real. And I don't want to go deeper into that, but it's just my experience with it. And I bring it into the work because I see the benefits for, the entrepreneurial journey. But a big part of me also wants to open people to getting a better understanding of who we really are as human beings and, creatures that live on that planet. And that's why meditation is so important.
Yeah, that's exciting. And I also want to communicate that we had recently as well come out of a Zen meditation retreat that you had led as well, along with your partner, and then as well your Zen master contributed to the experience. And meditation, I would argue as well, was one of my first loves, when it comes to a certain discipline or a certain practice that had helped me find deeper connection to myself, a deeper understanding of who I really am at my essence. And it was really wonderful to come back to it in a deeper way, where I'd in the past as well done a Vipassana and a darkness retreat. So it's always guided me in my life. But to come back to it in this very intensive way, it had formed a deeper love for it again, something that I'm really excited as well to continue. And I absolutely as well, see it very similar as yourself, like the impact and the value that this can provide. Why do you believe has become so important to you that individuals have a deeper understanding of who they really are at their essence? And I guess what I might as well add to that is understand the interconnectedness that they experience, not just with them in life, but also with all the beings around us.
Well, I think there are two answers to it. One is these experiences in meditation have been for me the greatest gifts I have received in life. It is the highest level of freedom that can possibly experience, and freedom being my number one value. And I simply I care for people and I want them to experience that as well, because I truly believe it is available to everyone, and it's kind of sad if like people don't get to experience that. That's one reason. The second is that so I personally believe that we as humanity haven't really developed further. I look at the world today and I'm like, it's not so much different. Maybe we don't have like a big world war going on right now, but the last one is like, 80 years ago. And if I look at the things that are happening right now, I mean, we're not so far away from that. And there are so many things where I look at, I'm like, let's say how wealth is distributed across the planet, right? It's simply not, let's say, what we as human beings would be capable of creating in terms of how we live together, in terms of how we distribute resources, in terms of what level of peace we have, what level of enjoyment, what level of love and compassion we demonstrate. We are simply not living up to the fullest potential that we have as human beings. We are maybe a 3% version of what's really available. Maybe it's 10, I don't know, but something, right? And that has to do with a misconception, with a misunderstanding around who we really are. And I believe that if more people would follow that path and have these insights, and would only, let's say, move 10% towards more love, more compassion, more, which comes from like the experience of, oh, we are one in the end, originating from one source. We could truly organize life on that planet very differently, with significantly less suffering. And that's what I believe is really driving me, to wanting to offer that modalities to everyone that is close to me, and then through Acta to, like, hopefully many thousands of people. And yeah, I simply believe the level of suffering on the planet is unnecessary, and it originates from a mistaken idea around who we really are. And that doesn't mean, it's really important for me to say, that now everyone needs to become a Zen master. That's not what I'm saying. I believe that a few glimpses of our true nature will be enough to initiate a change that will benefit everyone and will create life on planet with significantly less suffering.
I 100% as well agree. And I would argue as well that both our individual journeys and as well all the progression that we've made are like a true testament of that experience being possible. And I would argue as well, like, we're very extreme in our ways in terms of how dedicated we've been towards that change, which as well has allowed for significant change. But I also want to argue for individuals who might not be ready nor are willing to dedicate themselves to such a journey, to such a path. I think there's also a lot more available regardless.
Yeah.
And I also want to just highlight and communicate the fact that I love everything that you're saying, and I agree with everything. And like I would as well love individuals to be more connected to those understandings and to that to this idea of meaning and purpose and to something bigger than themselves. And I also just want to name, having lived in Bali for almost 5 years, I'm more compassionate towards why certain individuals might not go on this path. Because I think there has been a journey, and this is also where I'm getting a little bit more outspoken. I feel like in some ways we have taken these principles and these ideas and we have co-opted them and created fucking identities around them, spiritual identities. And it's almost like we are playing the same game that a lot of people are still playing in the West. But just now I have a different playing field for it.
100%.
And I'm somewhat irritated about it. And I think a lot of individuals perceive perhaps that they believe, oh, for me to step into meditation, for me to do breath work, for me to perhaps go into a relationship workshop might require me to start operating in this way, to start showing up in this way, to start dressing like that, to start speaking in these ways, to start to have certain ideologies. And I'm like, no, like, you don't need any of that.
No.
And I wish people would know that. And I think something that I really value about you, and something that I've really become a really strong stand for, is to offer this work in a really grounded way. To offer this work in a way that bridges and meets individuals exactly where they're at and doesn't require them to be anywhere else. And also still allows them to live their normal fucking lives.
Totally.
And not change anything.
Totally.
All that might change is them feeling perhaps more liberty in their hearts, more compassion, more empowerment.
Yeah, man. Like, I couldn't agree more, right? It's like the moment let's say, what is available in terms of, let's say, experiences through meditation, the moment we take that, make it a concept of the mind, and then try to live up to these standards, we're setting ourselves up for failure. The way, from my point of view, it can work is we simply start practicing, and then over time, we make experiences and we get more grounded and whatsoever. These qualities, which are inherent human qualities, going to shine through more and more, little by little. And it's really not about, oh, I had 2 meditations, now I'm the most compassionate being on the planet. No, fuck, that's not true. Simply practicing and allowing these qualities to start living through us, rather than having the idea in the mind of, like, I am now like the spiritual person that is like, no, only eating vegan, stop smoking, and whatever else, And I think that's really a misconception. I have a fun story here. Like, so I always wanted to, let's say, have a period in my life where I'm smoking. And I did that this year. And I enjoyed it a lot, and actually still smoking, though. I'm still enjoying it, right? And I got on that call, was a group of people on that call, and started smoking on the call. And then one guy said, interesting, you're smoking, so you're not wanting to become enlightened anymore. And it's like, this, there you go. This is exactly the problem that people associate, let's say, with the better spiritual person, the person that is eating vegan, not smoking, not drinking alcohol, not going to parties, not taking drugs, blah, blah, blah. But in the end, it has nothing to do with it. I actually enjoy I enjoy taking the freedom to, let's say, express and follow my desires in a way where I can say I'm not harming anyone.
Yes.
But I'm 100% sure that I could be a fucking, alcohol, nicotine, and whatever else addict, and be a Zen master.
Absolutely agreed. I mean, and there is as well, one master, Chogyam Trungpa, who as well wrote the book Spiritual Materialism, who kind of, took this as a pathway. He had explored a lot of these spiritual traditions, and as well, don't quote me on this in the sense that I haven't really studied his work, but from my understanding as well, he's really challenged a lot of these spiritual concepts and would look like, what would it mean as well for me to start drinking again or start smoking again? Simply to eradicate these notions, these identities that naturally get formed when we start getting on this path, because now we start believing, I'm more valuable, I'm more worthy because I am now vegan and all these things, right? And each to their own, like everyone choose the path that is right. And of course, to your point as well, like, of course, the more we follow such a path, the more we're going to be sensitive to the fact that our actions might have implications on other people, but also ourselves. And then we're naturally going to choose not to engage in those things. From my understanding as well, you're kind of starting to limit your smoking as well because of those very reasons, right?
Exactly.
But it's kind of funny as well. And I think we're kind of similar in that. From my understanding, you love edgy and as well controversial understandings and challenge society, because there is something to say about how these identities keep us trapped. Trapped to certain notions of who we believe we should be, which create these underlying demands and obligations of who we think we should be, which takes us away from the very freedom that we might be looking for.
And it disconnects us from our deepest gifts. And because and to bring it back a bit to the discussion we had around founders, right? If I am creating my business so that it makes me be that person that I think I have to be, it can work. It's super stressful. It's going to burn me out, very likely, and it's not going to be as strong as someone that is following a very deep impulse and is simply creating for the sake of creating, for the joy of creating, because the topic is so close to their heart. They just create. And if that creation is then being picked up and becomes big and like creates revenues, they will enjoy that. And there's only a small part of them. I wouldn't say anyone is completely free of it, right? But there's only a small part of them that really needs that. And that is really what happens when we grow up in the way that society in the Western world is constructed today. It's like all these ideas of who we have to be and have to be this way and that way, and the good person doesn't do this and the good person doesn't do that, and it all doesn't work out in the end, because then in the end we have created this idea of how great we are and how good we are and whatever, and no one looks at the facts that we need a certain amount of people on that planet to be super poor in order for us to enjoy our wealth. And we have elected a government that employs military to other countries and kills people. And we live in that illusion that we are good. It's just complete bullshit. It's not true.
And if you as well listen to our first podcast, I think you've as well spoken volumes to the fact that you had all these roles and personas and masks and obligations and demands that you had put on yourself. And ironically, while you had always valued freedom and it's been your highest value, you've essentially lived in a very way that has enforced you
Yeah.
to feel trapped and forced you
100%.
to feel stuck
Yeah.
and actually not free. So it's so ironic what happens when we create these identities of I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a coach, I'm a founder, I'm all these things, and then we have an understanding around, oh, this is how a founder acts, this is how an entrepreneur acts, this is what a coach does, this is what a podcast host does, all these things.
Yeah, totally.
It's confining, and I think there is value to the point that we want to hold these identities loosely and then observe whenever you start to feel some stagnation around that.
Yeah.
Perhaps even like just throw it out, and just see what happens, right?
100%. I love that because like I want to own for me that I still create self images.
Likewise.
The good thing is now I notice it quite early
Mm.
and usually find a way to destroy them. And I actually enjoy the destroying of a self image.
Do you have an example of how that might be?
I mean, I can give you an example of how I destroyed one of the biggest self images I had. And I can speak to one that is just coming up as we speak, where I don't know yet how to destroy it. But so let's say I had portrayed that self-image of this very successful entrepreneurs that made millions of euro and like had built that great company and has like everything together and like really solid guy, right? And in reality, I had kind of like two lives. I had this one life that I was showing publicly, the other life where I was like cheating and doing party and drugs and like alcohol and all these type of things, right? And at some point, I made that public. So I gave like the full picture. So anyone that had thought that I have my shit together could let go of that idea because obviously I hadn't.
Yeah.
So that was a big move of destroying self-image.
Yeah.
Then during my journey, I had investigated a bit around my behavior around porn, right? And I had a period where I was like, I'm never watching porn again. It's like bad, blah, blah, blah. And I realized then, there was a self-image around the guy that never watched porn. So actually, I don't know if it was in your podcast, but somewhere I said, actually, I do watch it again.
Yeah.
And I want to own that for myself. I do watch porn sometimes.
Yeah.
And now I'm noticing this. I've created like a new vision for I want to go in life. And I can even see like how a part of me is now thinking around, okay, what like, this is a self-image of the guy who's going to be the savior of the world. So it will be very important for me to find a way how to destroy that as well. Because as you rightfully said, like any self-image that then requires other people to see me in a certain way is once again a prison. And that's where the meditation once again comes in, where I realize like when I sit with the question, who am I really? I get to realize I'm none of these. I can choose all of these different roads and it's nice, but I shouldn't like, let's say, confuse these roads with who I truly am at my core.
Yeah.
And I want to claim that I'm definitely going to create a self-image. I'm definitely going to identify with it.
Yeah.
I will realize it, and either then through feedback from others or myself, I will let go of it.
I love it, man. And I just want to acknowledge I'm super amused as well with like this rabbit hole that we had gone under. And I think it was valuable. And part of me does question like, okay, what the fuck are the listeners going to think of this? Like particularly around these like radical approaches. And yeah, I mean, I guess I definitely want to bookmark this conversation around porn because I think that itself could be a podcast. And I'd really love to do that with you sometime. But I guess just to as well return back to some of the initial understandings that I wanted to explore with you. So I guess we're starting to paint a picture towards the importance of meditation. Help us elaborate a little bit more around the function for you around coaching and as well breath work.
So the way I see it is it's great to have a spiritual practice and spiritual path, which meditation is really the opener for me, right? Then I can have these like insights and understandings around my true nature and whatever and make experiences of oneness. It's really difficult to live from these places because I still have like a human body, with a human conditioning and the nervous system. And that's where, for me, breathwork comes in. It helps me to integrate and to come back to center and to come back to grounding on a daily basis, basically, in daily life. So that's one part of it, like embodying these experiences and bringing them through the body, kind of like seeing the body as an instrument of consciousness in a certain way. So it's nice if I, as consciousness, have a certain experience, and how can I actually live from that place in daily life? That's where breathwork comes in. And then also to simply let go of, let's say, past experiences, this trauma that has happened to me. Kind of like moving through that in breathwork again will enable me to not living from these old places anymore, right?
Yeah.
So it's really about, breathwork is for me about navigating the human experience, whereas meditation is supporting the human experience, but has a spiritual direction.
Beautiful.
And then coaching is, for me, coaching is completely in the working with the human system realm. The difference between coaching and breathwork, and why you need both, from my point of view, is like coaching stays on a mind level in a certain way. And then there again, like I have the insights, I understand my behavior. Now in a moment of stress or like, of peak intensity, will I be able to act differently if I don't do the breathwork and don't, change my system and rewire it? Very, very likely my subconscious just going to override all my nice ideas and how I actually wanted to show up. I mean, I've experienced it myself. Like I looked at my shit in coaching, I was like, yeah, I'm going to change all of that. Moment of high intensity, I went back to old behaviors. The moment I did breathwork, it created for me a little window, let's say, where peak intensity, or I'm still by myself, I can actually, still with myself, I see the intensity, I see the part of me that wants to turn to the old behavior, I can choose differently. That was only possible through breathwork.
Amazing, man. And I guess I as well just want to highlight, from the perspective of a practitioner, we have to understand, like, we're this integrative ecosystem with different functions and as well different purposes. Like if you just look at the brain, we have the brain stem, we have the limbic system, we have the prefrontal cortex, all associated to very different functions, right? Like the brainstem is going to be more orientated towards the nervous system, towards our more instinctual nature, whereas the limbic system is going to be, it's not that simple, but just for the sake of the conversation, I want to simplify to that. It is more orientated towards our emotional function, where the prefrontal cortex is more orientated towards our capacity to reason, for logic, for understanding, for empathy. And we have to approach, I believe at least, work around self-awareness and growth from all these various different systems. We can't just focus on one, because otherwise the other one might sabotage us. And so I think what you're really communicating here and demonstrating here is a really integrative system that I as well seek to employ in my work. And I think last thing I'll as well add is, just jumping back to the very thing that you had said around like founders and entrepreneurs, that like the very nature of the work is just the high stress that a lot of founders will experience, and as well the like massive amount of emotions that one will go through day by day. But naturally, because of the fast-paced movement, there isn't always the capacity to really process a lot of those emotions moment to moment. So I would say an experience like breathwork can support us, first of all, in clearing some of the accumulated emotions, but as well allow us to have a level of maintenance towards it. Whereas like having a mirror of someone who coaches you provides you an understanding of your patterns in a way that you can't see yourself. You can't see your own fucking shadow, right? So with that, there's just immense value, and I've as well deprived immense value from all these different directions in my own personal growth journey.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Beautiful. So let's transition a little bit. And I think this is also something that you've continuously kind of touched on and come into, which is this understanding that you really want to support people to access their inner genius, to access who they really are at their core, and start to operate in the business world from that place. I'd love for you to elaborate on that.
It actually comes from a deep pain that I experienced, which is let's say the way I grew up, like I wasn't empowered or encouraged to, let's say, follow these early childhood kind of like inclinations. I grew up with like a certain idea around like, okay, what is valuable and what's not valuable, and what is a path of life that makes sense to choose. And this is also where my feeling of not being free, that I mean, one of my earliest memories around not feeling free, I was like 5 or 6 years old. And only now in the past years I've been able to access what I would call for me true freedom. And I'm right now, I'd say I'm at the absolute peak kind of freedom experience that I've ever had. And it took me like so many years and so much work to get there. And it was such a pain to live in that prison basically. And I do believe with following or let's say having someone that encourages me to follow these impulses that feel true to me, following, investigating what is really close to my heart. What do I want to show up in the world? What do I want to bring to the world? What do I want to create? Is such a gift. It's a gift that I had wished for, but hadn't received.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's quite normal that like our deepest pain becomes our biggest gift. And I really enjoy empowering people to following their journey, and following what's really true for them and stepping into their power and be creating. And that's why we do that at Acta. And I think a positive side effect of that is we simply build the better, stronger, more resilient, sustainable entrepreneurs and companies in the end.
Yeah, I think if I just ponder on the fact of seeing someone in their own unique genius, I think there's nothing more gratifying. Like to
Exactly.
really see someone really operating in what it is that they love, like what it is that they're naturally good at,
Yeah.
and looking at how everything that they had done in their lives is now starting to come together for this very thing, and then direct it towards something that's meaningful to them, something that they care about, which often, to your point as well, comes from a place of pain, right? Like if we just look at this etymology of like passion, it comes from this understanding of suffering, right? And embracing that and using that as a vehicle to be of service to other people. So I love that as an understanding.
Thank you.
And I think something as well that I really want to highlight is just how much you guys are really putting the human first. And at least from what I've understood is that if eventually there comes a time where an individual who operates with you guys understands that his inner genius is elsewhere, you guys would want him to follow that.
Oh yeah, big time. Totally. You would always want someone to be very clear and vocal around where their inner genius takes them, and would much rather have someone, even if that is like the, let's say, best performing person that works for us, to follow their true calling instead of staying with us. That's always more important to us. Yeah, totally.
Anything you want to elaborate on why that is so important to you, or why that is more important?
It is simply, in the end, what my co-founder and me truly want for that world. So we wouldn't compromise on that, even if that means that we as a company have to take a hit because we lose someone that is like really performing well. It really comes from a place of like, it's integrity in the end, like integrity with our mission and what we want for the world, basically. And we would even like, I mean, ironically, with all the modalities that we provide, very likely people are going to find out what they really want in our environment. And it might lead to really valuable team members leaving the team if Acta is not the right place for them anymore. And at the same time, it might also lead to opportunities where I say, hey, actually, what I'm working on right now, that's not it anymore. I would love to create this. Can you guys support that? Right? And I much rather support someone on a new journey than have someone working on something that I actually don't don't really feel anymore.
Mm.
And I think the challenge will be, and we haven't gotten there yet because we only started like a couple of months ago, right? But the challenge will be how to distinguish between, okay, what do I intuitively feel where I should go? Where is my true inner genius? Where does that journey take me? What direction? And what is just resistance I have against hard work for my current project or something, right?
Yeah.
Because these two can be easily mistaken.
Yeah.
Like, I don't feel what I'm doing. Yeah, but even the thing I love can feel hard at times,
That's it.
right? So like this important distinction that will be interesting to watch and observe and work through that with people to see if is it real,
Yeah.
or is it just some old pattern or resistance or whatever else. And that's why we need not only meditation or only breathwork or only coach, we need all of that.
That's it.
Because it all needs to come together to actually, and even then, we might be wrong at times because it is a challenge, right?
Sure.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
I even sometimes look at the stuff that I do, I'm like fuck all of that, and then 4 hours later I understand again why I want to do it, and feels good again. But navigating these moments will be a bit the challenge I see for us. And I think we are well equipped with the practices that we have.
Agreed. And I think there is something to say as well about if one is going to go on a path of following one's genius, it does as well require one to follow one's impulses.
Yeah.
To require to follow one's aliveness. And it does require a deeper, I guess, capacity to be in one's sensorial experience. But to your point, we do have to as well distinguish between what is just resistance and what is actually like a true calling here right now, and
exactly.
This is also why, we just got to continuously study and keep drilling down these deeper understandings of ourselves. And I see that as well in my own life still, resistance sometimes shows up, and then there is this projection towards, oh no, I want to go on a different path. And sometimes I just need things to settle down a little bit just to really recognize, hey, what's actually true is I'm just really afraid.
I can totally relate to that. Like, for example, up until even 6 months ago, I've constantly said, like, my deepest gift is not to be a facilitator, but to like create systems in which facilitators can operate. And I noticed at some point, oh, that's actually not true. It's resistance because I'm afraid of the feedback and judgment from a group that I would facilitate. So I really spent that summer in like co-hosting a few retreats, doing stuff with my actor team that felt fucking uncomfortable, guiding them through some like whatever embodiment practice that I've learned from Bjoern, for example, right? Or working one-on-one in, like, I'm not a coach, but I can have some coaching skills, let's say, that I acquired through my own experiences, like coaching some of the individuals, like teaching them meditation, like guiding someone one-on-one through meditation, holding a group through a meditation. I still remember, like, first meditation circle I hold, I was fucking nervous. And after 10 times, I'm like, I can drop into something and then completely unprepared throw up a question and it works well and it's fine, right? So just saying, like, I noticed in myself, there was resistance. And it was important then to go through the experience and to follow the calling of exploring my capacity as a facilitator. Coming to the realization that still my deepest gift is likely going to take me elsewhere, but facilitating myself will always be part of my expression in the world, but a part of it, not the only part of it, right? But so it's super important.
Beautiful, man. And it's interesting, like, I don't know if you agree with this, but I almost want to like untangle a little bit this idea of being in one's inner genius and then also directing it towards something that is meaningful to us, and then as well transmitting a certain level of love, care, compassion towards that. I almost have a sense that those are a little bit separate things. The inner genius is just like what you're incredible at. There might be a connection to a certain level of pain that you've experienced, and as a result needed to learn a lot of skills for that. But I think there is something to say about the individual who's, let's just say, gone on a particular type of hero's journey, and who's gone through a lot of pain and now sees other people struggling with the very thing that they struggled with, and then they actually willingly allow themselves to feel the compassion, the empathy for other people's pain, and as well direct themselves towards that. I'd love to hear your perspective on perhaps what role love, care, compassion plays in as an entrepreneur, a founder, even here.
That's an interesting one. Okay, so the way I see it is, and I want to compare it to something that we practice in Zen. I believe the inner genius can, but doesn't have to do with love, care, and compassion. It can be completely disconnected to it. The inner genius for me is an expression of life force energy showing up as the highest excitement for what I'm doing right now. Life force energy as such doesn't care for compassion, love, or anything else. It just wants to move, right? We have good and bad on the planet. I mean, in terms of like, let's say peace and war. We have these things we perceive as good and things we perceive as bad, right? The sun is going to destroy the earth at some point. So life force energy just moves. It doesn't care for love, compassion, and humanity and all these type of things. So for example, in Zen, we meditate on the hara, which is like the lower energy center.
Yep.
Having strong access to this can enable us to do things that other people can't do. Samurais used it to kill. It's a training to be more effective, have more life force energy moving, and using that and directing it, and with that developing a power that other people can't access it. So we trained warriors using that energy to be more effective killers. Once that energy makes it up to the heart, qualities such as compassion, love, and care start to open, and that will change the directions these actions take. But for me, it's kind of like similar. Like the inner genius is like my life force, energy, access, hara, whatever you want to call that, and that expresses.
Yep.
And it can express in a super compassionate way, but it can also express in a way that has nothing to do with it. That, from my point of view, happens then later when these, let's say, more heart-centered qualities are added to the way I'm impacting the world. And these qualities, I believe, can be established through, especially through spiritual practice, that allows me to feel more of these things and then wanting them to be part of my actions. That's the best, explanation I can come up with right now, and I might be completely wrong. I don't know.
No, it's beautiful. And I think as well, grief and that connection to death as well plays a vital role in that. And I would
Yeah.
love to just bookmark that for a
Mhm.
little bit later. But, I think that is also something that has bonded and connected us so deeply.
Yeah.
That connection that we individually share around grief and death and our experiences and distinct experiences around that, and how it's as well brought us together in a really beautiful way, and how it as well shaped us and forged us towards that compassion and gentleness and softness and tenderness, which it takes a lot to forge that, right? I would say let's close that here for now, because I think there's a few more other things that I would like to address that I think could be interesting to explore. I love right now this framing, because we're exploring this idea of like love, compassion, care, and like all the humanness and all that. But something as well that I know about you as an entrepreneur, and like exploring that a little bit as well in myself, where I believe this is also where I can grow as an entrepreneur, is separating the gap from a certain action that you perceive needs to be taken, an impulse that comes alive from you, and any planning and just executing, right? Like, I see you as someone who is willing to boldly and courageously execute and do it in as well a really fast way. Explain your philosophy and your understandings around that, and why you believe as well that is important.
Yeah, that's a good question. Why I believe it's important. The thing is, I simply believe it's important. I have never asked myself the question. I mean, it's really hard for me to say, because the moment I perceive something as, yeah, I want to do that, there's a sense of urgency. I'm also then quite impatient, because then and I feel I feel so much energy that just wants to move, so I move it. I mean, things become real the moment I start acting. And probably that's the best explanation that I can come up with right now. I'm bored by things that exist on paper or thoughts. So, for example, let's say I take a certain decision. Up until one split second before that decision actually turns into action and happens, it's not real for me. So, let's say I book a flight ticket. Until I'm in the plane, for me, it's not real. I could still walk out. I could still just walk out the door and do something else, right? And sometimes these things have actually happened. Just a couple of weeks ago, I was on the way to an event, and on the way there, we booked a flight to Ibiza and didn't show up there. Things are not real until they actually happen. And I have I have a strong desire to feel and experience, right? And I really experience something that happens. So I think that's really like the moment I'm excited.
Yep.
I want to turn it into action immediately to experience how it is.
Yep.
And then that doesn't mean that I stick with it. It might be the experience is different to what I expected. I let go of it very fast and come up with something else.
Yep.
But I think it's really my drive to experience the idea and not sitting with it too long. Yeah.
I love it. Perhaps I can help as well with my observations as well, my own internal experience with this. But it just appears that this circuit of you feeling an impulse and then just executing and acting from it seems very uninterrupted, and there is like no kinks in it, let's just say. Where
no.
what I'm observing with a lot of individuals, along as well with myself, is that there is hesitation, hesitation that occurs because a particular execution will as well require me to face the consequences of that action that I'm going to take.
Yeah.
You know, this might be rejection, this might be judgment, this might be financial failure, you know, this might be loss, whatever is there. Like any form of action will requires us to take responsibility for the consequences that we'll need to bear due to the actions that we take.
Yeah.
And I see this is where the hesitation occurs for so many individuals. And one of the things that I guess, you know, as well just pops into mind right now is I'm going to be speaking with Robert Glover in 1 week again. And he has this idea that nice guys rot in middle management around this understanding that they might like do really good on average, but they'll never go to those places where they can actually build true success. You know, I guess more from the conventional norms, because that type of success requires a particular type of action. It requires a particular type of movement. And with that as well, it requires us to as well capacitate and to be with a lot of those emotions. And something as well that I'm practicing with myself is from the moment I'm making a decision, not to plan so much around it, not to strategize so much around it, but actually go into the experience that like needs to be taken, such as a podcast, without needing to manage all the emotions that I don't really want to feel prior to that.
How do you do that?
I think it just requires, how I do it is a lot of the different disciplines that I've practiced over the many years are supporting me on that.
Nice.
I mean, without the meditative practice, without all this embodiment work that I've done, without the years that I've dedicated towards breath work, I don't think I would be able to manage and be with all those emotions. So I would argue it's, I can thank years of practice for that. And it's still fucking difficult. You know? But I think what is also helping me now is to have had courage. Courage is the thing that's necessary in those situations. To have had the courage to go into those situations and then as well come out on the other side, recognizing, oh, I actually didn't need all this preparation. I didn't need to manage all these emotions. And I can still trust in my capacity to like show up in a way that I can be proud of. And if I make mistakes, if I fail, how can I learn to be a little bit more compassionate, a little bit more understanding with myself? Like one of the things as well that I had addressed as well with you that I'm going to be starting to do is every Monday morning from 9 until 11 a.m., I'm going to lock myself up in the studio and I'm going to start creating content. Because one of the things that I have as well consistently done is avoided putting myself in front of a camera. Because I'm better in engagements such as this, in interactions where we can bounce off of each other. I'm more responsive in these ways. But to be facing a camera in this way and to be speaking is anxiety inducing for me. And I have already given myself a bit of a bypass, let's just say, and am going to go into the situation with the understanding that I might really suck at the beginning when I do this. For the first few weeks, I'm just going to suck. And I'm just going to allow myself to suck. And that's okay. I'm going to be compassionate. I'm going to be innocent. I'm going to allow that just to be the case. Very similar to the way it was when I had my first fucking podcast, you know, whereas like the way I show up today is very different. So that's what I would say to that.
Nice. I love that, man, you know, because I believe it's it's so important. And if especially if you are like, you know, sharing around your journey with that, I think it's so valuable. Because I've been, like, say, I've worked with many individuals, let's say people who are very creative, that have a certain gift, a certain magic, like you have, like you clearly have a certain magic that you bring to the world. And it's the moment they want to like add the element of entrepreneurship to their magic, things become difficult.
Yep.
And I have, even like in the past, I have when I was trying to support these individuals, I was basically taking away from them the responsibility of like being entrepreneur, and that created an dependency. And like it was a nightmare, and I needed to learn that lesson because I was seeing like people that's like, man, you have such a great magic. Let me help you bring that to the world. And then I wasn't aware of like my shadow, like wanting to save someone, and then, you know, created this dependency, and then everything went like, you know, downhill. So I think if you know, go through that process and work through that, and then while keeping your magic, develops the capacity to follow these impulses and have these traits that like kind of like these successful entrepreneurs have, it will be insanely valuable. And it's in a certain way, it is exactly what we also want to provide for the people at ACTA, because we do attract very creative geniuses, and we want to equip them with the right mindset and strategies and stuff to become also successful entrepreneurs.
Yep.
But it's also something we haven't proven yet. So it's super fascinating, and it will be really cool to watch that journey of you and to be together in it. Because I personally believe, like, if all the magicians of that world that bring healing and spiritual modalities to the world would put themselves through the process, and I truly believe that everyone can get there, they would have way more impact, and would change the world for the better.
That's why I'm fucking doing it.
But the magicians leave the world to the fucking turbo capitalistic guys like I used to be,
right?
Because we have these traits, and we didn't do anything for having these traits.
Yeah,
I was born, and basically through my upbringing, I had these traits.
Yeah,
I just have them, but I didn't do anything. I wasn't trained or whatever, right?
Which is why it's so difficult for you to answer these fucking questions.
Exactly, because this is the way I perceive the world.
Yes.
Right? But if you do the work and work through that, it makes you extremely powerful.
And this is exactly what I'm here for, man, because up until a year ago, I didn't even embody the identity of an entrepreneur. To me, I was a coach. I was a nervous system practitioner. I was a teacher in some ways as well. But I had a shadow. A shadow around money, a shadow around entrepreneurship, a shadow around what it means to be a businessman. And I just didn't want to be like that. And I actually want to say, like, meeting you and then meeting someone who is so heart open and who cares about humanity so deeply, ironically, actually allowed me to step into that a little bit more, and also made me recognize how important this is. And I've come to observe how, like, you know, me as a creative, and observing all my other creative friends, like we're struggling with the same things, and as a result, we're not able to provide the impact to the world that we know we can. I know I can create an immense impact, but it requires me as well to ingrain certain skills that I yet don't have. And I'm willing to go through the fire now to do that, because I recognize the importance of this work and wanting to create this impact.
Nice. Love that, man. Love that.
Thank you, man. Well, there's one more subject matter that I do want to address that's also really dear and close to my heart as yours as well. But I would like to just offer you the question, is there anything around your philosophy around business and as well what you maybe want to bring into Akta that you hadn't shared yet that you would like to add here to this conversation?
Honestly, there's just it might sound a bit silly and simple, and we kind of touched on it already, but the first tattoo I wanted to get, and then my friend Genna prevented it. It was inspired by Richard Branson, which was "Screw it, let's do it." And honestly, there's one thing I just go fucking do it. Just do it. And it sounds so simple. Everyone says it.
Yeah.
It actually requires a lot of courage to actually follow that, and to not do it in a, let's say, not thoughtful, unskillful way. That's
Yeah.
not my point. But dedicate a good amount of thinking around what you want to do and how you want to do it, and then try it out. And there's a second thing that's also not a saying from me. I picked it up somewhere, but like, strong opinions loosely held. Form a strong opinion, go fucking do it, let go of it the moment the data shows something different. This is a simple way I operate.
I love it.
Always.
Yep.
In Akta, we do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Form a strong opinion, we act on it super fast, very aggressively. Data shows us we need to change course, we come back, scratch the whole thing, and do something different. This is, I believe, the simplest advice approach to building business. I would add as the last piece, build for yourself. So if you are in product development, I would say build for yourself. Build something that solves the problem for you. I think that will ensure the highest quality of outcome. And yeah, there are probably many smaller lessons where I could add, but this is basically the main frameworks that I would say.
No, I enjoy it. Yeah, and I also just want to acknowledge that it was really so eye-opening for me to come to Berlin, to witness your team, to be in your office, and to observe all these young, vibrant, entrepreneurs who are really just going for it. And there was something exciting about it. There was something incredibly bonding for it. And it made me recognize there's a whole nother environment and a whole nother way to bring this work out to the world that I hadn't been able to access as a result of being here in Bali. And I just want to as well say for the record that I've now decided and chosen that I'm going to be leaving Bali, next year. And for me, I really recognize that I'm here for impact, and I'm here to create change and help other people. And I have a sense that it could be an entire podcast, but I have a sense that being or continuing to stay on this island longer than the intended time will no longer serve me for that. So I just want to thank you, for you as well, standing so strong in this vision, and as well building it and bringing it into life, because it has helped me as well to open my eyes towards something new for myself.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that this is what I did for you. Nice.
I'm glad as well. Well, this is an important topic for me, and we've as well slightly touched it on our first podcast, but like I said, I think something that's bonded us so closely and so deeply with each other is we've gone through certain experiences that have allowed us to access perhaps the impermanence of life.
Yeah.
And with that, perhaps a deeper meaning. And we've gone through those existential questions and challenges. And I guess one of the questions I do really want to ask you is, when you had exited, when you had sold your company, what had led you to start working at a hospice and start helping people who were dying?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, first of all, between me doing the hospice work and my exit, were probably like 3 years in between. Yeah, it's really, I mean, it was at the time where my ex-partner and me were starting to break up, and through she had gone through many years of very severe, usually terminal disease, and then Luckily, some new medicine kind of like saved her life in a certain way. So, but I had like years of like witnessing a significant change and decrease in health, and potentially facing death. Mm, and I think it was really. I had mentioned like this author before, Stephen Divine, who I read his books, and he demonstrated the work with dying people as spiritual practice, as it is an opportunity to like witnessing that process of like a person dying is somehow an opportunity for deep insight and recognition. So that was there, and then the other part was that let's say in that world of like where people go to die, there's a lack of say real support in that process. And with real support, I mean people who have the capacity and the compassion to be with someone who is dying in their process without projecting their fears and stuff on them.
Yeah.
Which actually not many people have the capacity for that. And it's kind of like in terms of the little I that has all sorts of roles and identifications, it's the most painful process, the most frightening process can go through, right? And then it's such a nightmare, or it must be such a nightmare, to be in that experience alone without any support.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a big gift that we can give to someone, to not having to be alone in that process. So that all of these things kind of like touched me in a way. So for my own practice, for like being of service to other people. And I felt like I do have the capacity to meet people in that pain. And yeah, I think these were the reasons why I decided to start that type of work for like half a year or so. And it's somehow it's hard to explain it, but it brought me in touch with something very deep inside of me.
Can you explain what that is?
It's hard to grasp it, but it's a very tender, soft place, a very accepting place, also a very peaceful place. A place that also has some sadness, but it's not like a drowning sadness. It's more like a subtle sadness. And it somehow made me overall just more accepting of life as it is also. Yeah, and simply help to deepen my compassion. And yeah, I would say these are the main things. But then suddenly there was, it's always the same in my life experience. Even as a hospice work, I tell you, like I had read all the books. I hadn't touched one of these books for like 3 months. I was sitting on the sofa, and suddenly there was that thing, I'm going to go hospice work. And I just wrote some of the institutions. One replied, I went there. A week later, I was in. This is always how things occur to me. Like many times I can't explain where something comes from. It's just there, and then I follow the impulse.
Nice.
And this was similar.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes sense.
It absolutely does, man. I can relate to it as well in my own journey, especially when I went through more experimental phases of my life. And yeah, it's beautiful the way that you describe it, and what it as well allowed you to access. And like from a felt sense, I can as well connect to that very same experience in myself. And while I hadn't directly done hospice work, I've definitely been involved with a lot of, I guess, situations where there was hospice work involved through my work as a paramedic, but also engaging with a lot of elderly individuals who were at the end of their lives. Sometimes they don't even have to be elderly. Sometimes it can really just be cancer patients who might already be at stage 4. There's a deep recognition that they're going to be coming at the end of their lives. And there was almost this sense of like me learning in some ways to be with them as they are in the process of dying. And I'm just grateful enough that I had done the work for the amount of time that I'd done it, because I've observed how some of my colleagues as paramedics had become more hardened and
Hmm.
numb to that pain, to those experiences over time. Whereas I had a sense, because, I'd done it only for 3 years at the time, it still provided me that impact that it had on me initially. And I think that impact gave me a lot of content to work on and work with in my own life, and connect to that as well in my own experience, and as well observe it in other people. I think there's something that can often be missed with like grief work, or death, or embracing death, is the loneliness that can sometimes come,
Hmm.
and the almost existential crisis that we're required to tend to these things on our own. And there's something very heartbreaking about that. And when someone has gone through that experience personally, I think there is a way that we can be with individuals who are going through that, and offer them some solace in the recognition that we're here with them. And I guess last thing on that note is, what do you believe, like that compassion that you got to access, how do you believe it might support in the realms of work and business? And like, what role does compassion play in your eyes in terms of how we do business?
I think it comes down to what, say, me as an entrepreneur, what type of company do I want to build? So I would say I can build a highly successful, very profitable company that makes me very rich with zero compassion, not a problem. If I want that, I can go for that, no problem. Mm, it's ultimately not very fulfilling. It really limits the life experience.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say I can choose to create a very compassionate environment through practices, through increasing my own capacity to be with the emotions of others, to allow for them to have certain emotions and experiences, and to simply hold them in it. So compassion can be a real gift that I can access, and yeah, and it can be a place from which I approach my conversations, my meetings, even my conflicts, right? And if I do that, I will have the richer life experience, and with that also the richer entrepreneurial experience. And it's a choice. I don't have to do that, but there's a clear payoff and benefit from it. And if entrepreneurs start accessing compassion more, and taking more compassionate actions, companies will ultimately become a place where like people get to understand and know themselves better, get to express themselves, right? Because if I demonstrate a high level of compassion, the people in front of me will feel more safe to express and be themselves, and show maybe what we call weaknesses and whatever. Um, and when companies become that place, and many companies become such a place, then this will be a way in which we as humanity on this planet can start living together more compassionately, which will then also lead to a more equal distribution of wealth, a more equal distribution of health, and eventually an end to many crises and conflicts that we see on the planet right now. So yeah, it would be great if more people would choose to act more compassionately, and really there is training and teaching available around how to do that. And there is a clear immediate payoff in terms of the level of peace and containment and love that I feel in general as a result of taking these actions rather than choosing a different path.
Beautifully said. And I sure hope as well that listeners as well will take everything that you had said, and as well ponder on what it is that they really want. And I love as well that you're bringing it back with a certain level of agency to them and the recognition that they can choose. And I think there is something to say to that. And something that I've as well been pondering on recently is that I'm choosing meaning. I'm
Mhm.
choosing a life of purpose. And with that, there is certain, I guess, factors that I need to as well take in as a result of choosing a path of meaning and purpose. It
Mhm.
requires sacrifice. It requires a certain level of suffering. It requires a certain level of pain. For me, that's more important.
Mhm.
It's more fulfilling to me over short-term satisfaction, happiness, growth, gratification, and like, I mean, we've just explored your first podcast together where the first business that no second business that you
Mhm.
had built was really predicated on that notion,
Yeah.
around that gratification,
Yeah.
around for some form of solace, that if I build this thing, then I'll be fucking free. But it seems to have not provided you that,
No.
right? So a lot to think about here, man. And yeah, just want to acknowledge, man, like that's the vision I hold strongly. And it feels really good to have a brother on my side as well who
Mm.
shares that with me. And like I shared it here with you yesterday, and like, it's just as true today. Like I will happily go to war with you, man, to really create these changes and to make all that happen. So
Same here.
mm,
Same here. Feels great to have you by my side, man. Mm.
likewise, man. Likewise, brother.
Thank you.
Well, before we close off, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you would have loved to touch on, or anything that you would have
Mm.
loved to bring to our listeners?
Mm. I feel very complete, man. And I would hope this wasn't our last conversation here. So,
It absolutely won't be. That is at least the intention that I'm carrying. So, well, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for this very rich, very deep conversation. I couldn't have hoped for anything better, and really coming out of this with a really good feeling, and that usually as well shows me, okay, this was a good podcast.
same here, man. Same here.
Yeah, man. So I'm really thankful for that. Before I ask you my final question, where can our listeners find
Mm.
you? Where would you like to draw their attention when it comes to Akta, or perhaps anything
Mm.
else that you want them to know about?
Yeah. If you want to check out Acta, just visit acta.so, and otherwise find me on LinkedIn.
Wonderful. And I'll as well make sure to, as always, put all that in the show notes so listeners will get to know you. And as I'd mentioned as well, I'm sure they'll get to know you a lot better, because my intention is to have you around in this podcast a whole lot more and have a lot more epic conversations. So,
Good.
final question. What is the role of magic for you in your life, and why do you believe it's important?
Mm. To me, life is a mystery. If I really if I look at the whole thing that I call life, and like how everything is happening, and like how people come into my life, and like what are these little like things that we sometimes tend to call coincidences, it's all a fucking miracle somehow. And with that, mm, yeah, it's hard to explain it, but mm, I do believe in the mystery, and with that, I also have to believe in magic. I believe that there are things that are happening that are way beyond anything our mind could like possibly understand or grasp. And when that is true, then also things that we might call magic or unnatural or supernatural or whatever are also possible. So it plays a quite important role in my life. And I once read a funny saying, which is those who don't believe in magic will never find it.
Mhm.
So I think for magic to show up, I have to believe in it.
Yep. Well, thank you for bringing your magic to the world, man.
Thank you.
All right. Well, we're going to be finishing this conversation up. So, listeners, if you got a lot of value out of this conversation, as always, pay it forward to the next man, to the next person who might receive value from this conversation. And until next time, signing off.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Your time and attention is truly appreciated. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for my upcoming episodes. And in case you know somebody who would find this episode helpful, I encourage you to pay it forward. Finally, if you've personally been receiving value from the show, one way you're able to support this podcast is by leaving a 5-star rating and a written review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Not only does this help more people find the show, but it also supports me in bringing more incredible guests on for the future. I'm your host, Alex Lehman, and until next time, signing off.